My name is Katie, and along with Chuck and Forrest, we welcome you to Ancient Tracks, a Beast Inquiry, and All Things Beast podcast. We love to analyze historical and current cryptid reports, digging layer by layer and hoping to uncover those rare gems of knowledge, revealing a more understanding of our favorite elusive beast. We hope that you will stay till the end to hear the conclusion of today's show. We'd love for you to join our journey not only by hitting the like, subscribe, and the notification bell so that you know when we post, but also commenting and sharing an encounter or report that you would like for us to discuss. You can contact us on Facebook, Instagram, or email. The links are provided below in the description box. Hope to talk to you soon. Now let's get started with today's show. Today, we're going to be talking about JACKO. So this happened in 1884 on number 4 tunnel, just right above the town of Yale. I'm going to start with you, Forrest.
Well, it's a real interesting story, which I'm kind of familiar with because I used to travel that highway up there, up and down from Washington up to Alaska, and starts at Hope, and then you go up there. And we actually, my kids and I had actually visited a little museum there, and actually they got a couple of them. And I know that there was something in Yale, as I recall, and then I believe Boston Bar was the other one. And it's quite a famous incident. And we had talked to somebody in there, and they were telling us evidently they had a relative that had been involved in the actual capturing of JACKO. And I think what they were dealing with was a juvenile Bigfoot from all indications. And the poor guy had, from what the rail workers had surmised, was that he had fallen off of a cliff face, because they came by and they assumed he was sleeping on the side of the railway there. And he immediately, when they blew the horn before they entered that tunnel, he came to or woke up and then started scrambling up the cliff face. And the guys evidently made an attempt to capture him and climbed up above him. And one of the guys actually knocked him off with a large rock. And I kind of wonder sometimes they said that, he just kind of disappeared into the mists of history. And I think maybe between the fall and then somebody taking a big rock and then knocking him off the cliff face again, and then them finally capturing him, I just wonder sometimes if they might have actually done some damage to him and maybe, in fact, injured him beyond repair, which is kind of sad. But to me, we'll never know. It's been lost to time. But I think it's quite a valid story because people all up and down that road are familiar with it. And like I said, I actually spoke to somebody in a little museum there with pictures and all that and newspaper clippings framed, and that he'd had a relative. And it's been too many years ago. I don't remember if it was a great uncle, a grandfather, or a great great grandfather, or whatever, that had actually been on the railroad or worked for the railroad when this incident occurred. So poor JACKO was then locked up in Yale there, and kind of in jail for that matter. I think they fed him, if I remember correctly, and somebody else, Chuck, if you remember, said that they were surprised that they were just feeding him milk and how he relished that. But I will tell you this, that primates love milk. They even love cow's milk. They love formula. In fact, if you have a baby primate, you feed them human formula, and they do quite fine on it. You give them milk, they love and they relish milk. So it does not surprise me in the least that JACKO enjoyed drinking milk. I think, if I remember correctly, too, I think at some point in time, didn't they shave him or something?
I'm not sure about that. That's a good question.
I almost want to think that they had shaved him because I think that I read, actually, I think that I read that in the museum that they had shaved him because they wanted to look and see, but his skin was dark underneath. It wasn't pale.
So basically, if that actually took place, they thought this thing was a young human, is what they thought, that had just grown hairy at that time. If that's exactly what took place, I mean, that would make sense that they would want to shave him just to try to
To
get
see
him
if
to
he was,
be
yeah, to see
just
if
like
he's
everybody else.
human. Yeah. And of course, I think we've all seen those pictures of the hairless chimpanzees, and the musculature underneath that hair is unbelievable.
I
Um,
have seen those.
yes, yes. And alopecia actually occurs in other primates other than just humans. But it's amazing when you look at the amount of musculature that they develop versus uh, what humans naturally. I mean, no human would naturally develop muscles like that. But I kind of you have to feel sorry for poor Jacko. Here he's taken a fall, then he gets bonked on the head with a big rock, and then he gets locked up, and then somebody has the wild idea that, well, let's cut all of his hair off. You know, you got to feel sorry sometimes for what we do to animals, and some idiots call it in the name of science, but I have other names for it, which I won't repeat. But we just act stupid sometimes about some of the silly things that we do. And of course, back in those days, you hear a lot of this ape man, and really that at that point in time, in the 1880s, people were pretty familiar with apes, even though most of them probably had never seen one. I don't think, I don't know how prevalent circuses were, especially out on the West Coast out there, and in that part of British Columbia anyway. But I don't think that they'd have probably had too many traveling circuses that might have had chimpanzees or some kind of, well, I don't even think that it would have had gorillas at that point in time. But it kind of, I mean, that's usually what they're either referred to as wild man or ape man. And so, my heart kind of goes out to Jacko because I think he was poorly treated. And then what do they do after all this? They throw him on a boat. And, well, this is how the story goes. And who knows what the truth is now after all these years. But they throw him on a boat and then they ship him over. They're going to make him a sideshow in Europe and think they're going to use him to make money off of him. And I think that as the story goes, he actually perished on the boat trip over there. And they probably just, not having any way to preserve him anyway, they probably just threw him over the side of the boat. Yeah. That's usually the way it goes with we humans. But anyway, your heart has to go out to poor Jacko.
Yeah.
how his life ended up. I mean, that certainly, I think he would have been far happier in the walls of British Columbia than how he did end up. But, sometimes it is what it is. So, but I have no doubt that the story's true. I do. There's way too many people that know about it.
Yeah. Do we know how long he was kept in captivity? Has that ever? I could not find that anywhere.
Well, I don't ever recall as having seen that either. So I don't remember. I don't recall any dates or anything like that. Yeah. And I think that there was something in Vancouver. One of the papers in Vancouver is where that I saw that he had actually come there, and then they put him on a ship, and then he went out to sea that way.
Yeah.
So, and Vancouver's, gosh, I don't know how many miles. It's not too far from Yale there. So it would not be unforeseen that would be the only port city that they'd be able to ship them out of, that would be close at hand without coming into the United States. And they wouldn't want to do that. So,
yeah.
And yeah, if anybody wants to get a map out, Yale's actually not too far above the western Washington border. I mean, it's probably 100 miles, but not too far. So all that area up there is heavily forested, beautiful, beautiful forests up in that area. And it is prime habitat for Bigfoot. Prime habitat.
Yeah.
Plenty of food and plenty of resources.
Right. So I'm wondering, surely he had to have been malnourished at some point. And then the fall, like you said, who knows what head injuries he sustained from the fall. It does say that he stood about 4'7" and he weighed about 127 pounds. His forearms are longer than a man's forearm. They describe his hair as black, strong hair, and it covered his whole body except for his hands or paws and feet. I wonder why that is added, hands or paws.
Probably because you get back to you have to understand that the nomenclature in those days for referring even to ape species, I mean, I don't think they always referred to chimps or even the smaller monkeys and such as that as, even though they're hands. I mean, that's the way you refer to them. They have hands and feet. They don't have paws. They have hands and feet. They're primates. And even down to your lowest form of simians, your prosimians and stuff, your torsers and all that, you refer to them as hands and feet. But I think that they probably did that because some people were kind of unsure as to how they should refer to them. I mean, you're talking about, I'm not saying these people were stupid, but they obviously weren't educated in primatology or anthropology. And so they're not probably real clear as to how they should speak or even address these issues, Are they paws? Are they hands? Are they paws? Or what,
Right.
So,
well, obviously it was hands because he could hold a stick and break it by twisting it. And that would take fingers and opposable thumbs.
mm-hmm. And again, Chuck, now, what I find that is very believable about this story, and you and I have been questioned about this before.
Sure.
That how did he break the stick?
Exactly.
How did he break the stick? Now, the average Joe is not going to say, they're going to think he just took that stick and just popped it over and broke it. But that's not what they said. He took the stick, and what did he do with it? He twisted it to break it.
Yep. Which we see a lot of that in Bigfoot areas. And I think that is something that they do. They twist it and then they break it off. And there's some people out there, and I'm kind of in the same kind of theory, that there's a certain way on a twist, and you can actually tell whether whatever did this is either right-handed or left-handed, depending on how the twist is what direction the twist is in.
Well, I think you're probably correct there.
Mm-hmm. So it says here, maybe there's a little clue into how long he was in captivity. It says, since his capture, he would only half bark and half growl. He is, however, becoming daily more attached to his keeper, Mr. George Tilbury of this place, who proposes shortly starting for London, England to exhibit him. So maybe he wasn't in captivity for long.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like he was.
Well, back then, a boat ride from there to England would have been a pretty long trip, I think.
It doesn't say how far into the trip that he died.
Well, and if you're leaving from Vancouver Island in British Columbia, that's coming off the west coast. Holy moly. I'm just wondering, which way would they head? Would they head down and go around South America?
They didn't have the Panama Canal
then.
No
Panama Canal and no Suez Canal. So,
yeah.
You're going to have to go around Africa, the end of Africa, or you're going to have to go around the end of South America.
So
that would have been a long trip.
Yeah, long trip.
There's a possibility with that long of a trip that they didn't have enough food to feed this thing getting over there and died on the boat.
Well, yeah, it would kind of depend on what kind of food they were feeding him. I mean, no, it speaks that we have that they were, when he was with his keeper, that he was fed milk and berries. Yeah.
Well, it said his favorite food is berries and milk.
Yep.
So I don't know.
Which that
Well, how
all
are you going
makes
to be able to carry fresh milk on a voyage unless somebody possibly brought a goat along or something like that?
right. And even the berries.
Yeah. Well, not to mention people get sick on those boats. And
there's a lot of questions about what actually happened to him, but we do know that all the characteristics that were there, we know pretty much for certain that was a juvenile.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no doubt about that.
Well, his size gives him away, and the fact that he got attached so quickly. Now, it's not unusual at all for primates to get attached to their keepers. Whoever's feeding them, that is the one that they're going to really form the attachment with. You know, I mean, all primates are like kids. They kind of associate food with love. If you're giving them food, you know, hey, you must love me, you know. So, I mean, let's face it, your kids are the same way as, you know, people are the same way. If they're in a captive situation and somebody's feeding them and being kind to them, then that's going to represent you know, kindness and love, and they're going to form a bond there. Any primate is the same as a small child. And I don't think Bigfoot's any different. I think in a captive situation, and now an adult, that would be an entirely different situation. And I think when they have had cases where they have actually captured adult Bigfoot, there have been a couple of them out there that they died in captivity.
Yeah. Now that you mentioned the adults, what do you think about where his mom and his dad was?
That's a good question.
Yeah. But, you know, the juvenile primates develop much faster. Your chimpanzees, your gorillas, even all your monkeys, they all develop at a faster rate than our kids do. Humans. And they will stay with the troop and stay with the group, which is usually whether the females always stay with their moms. You know, you'll have a group of mothers and daughters, and then they will have babies, and they still form their little matrilineal group there. The boys will hang around till they're about 2, and then dad will usually run them off. And I think, just like with the juvenile that I saw out here on the highway in front of my place, that's about the size, about 4 to 4.5 feet is what I figured, estimated to be his size. He was actually, I always say sitting, but he didn't actually have his butt on the road. He was kind of squatting on the road, in the middle of the road. I estimated his size to be about 4 to 4.5 feet. He wasn't real big, but everybody laughed at Jessica and I because when we got to the gate, my first thought in my mind was, because he actually, when we turned around the truck and came back, and I mean to be getting off on something else, but it brought it to mind because, Chuck, you remember what we said. When we came back, he was gone, and then I looked off to the left side of the truck, and there he was running in the culvert, and then all of a sudden he just made the fastest left turn you ever in your life saw and went over my fence into my pasture.
Yeah.
And when we got up to the gate, which is about, I'd say 200 yards from where this all happened, both of us sat in there for a good 2-3 minutes. And we didn't really say a whole lot. But I know what both of us were thinking, because Jessica, she knew she was going to have to get out and get the gate because I was still recovering from my surgery at the time. So I was kind of slow getting down and then getting out and around and then getting back in. But the thought that was going through our mind, where's mom and dad?
Yeah.
He just went over to my pasture. And I'm looking out the right side of the pickup going, where's mom and dad? Now, they must have not been too close, because if it was easy enough with JACKO in that situation, because the guys somehow got up to the top of that cliff to throw a rock down at him when he scrambled back up the cliff. They must have not been around too close, because I think that they would have probably protected him at that point. I really do, seriously.
Oh yeah.
Even
Right.
if they did nothing but make a bluff charge or something like that. So I think he probably was off meander around doing his own little thing, being the typical teenager. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Don't you, Chuck?
Oh yeah, I agree with that, because we had and I'm gonna kind of tell a little story here. We went to a place down on the Texas-Oklahoma border, and we found a structure that obviously had something in it, and we picked it up on. Well, the way we found out something was in it is I took my camera out and zoomed in to the entrance to this structure, and it was solid black inside, and I finally just snapped a picture, and when my flash hit it, I could see eye shine. And so we knew something was in it, and one of the guys actually had a thermal imager, and he picked it up on thermal inside the structure. Well, the whole time this was all going on, and I'm gonna make this story a little bit short, but the whole time this was going on, we were hearing off to one side of us sticks being broken and foot stomping, and just all kinds of heck going on. And I think in the situation to JACKO, if mom and dad would have been pretty close, they would have had the same kind of production, so to speak, as what we had. I think mom and dad would have been very protective of JACKO if they were anywhere in the vicinity.
The size that he was, I don't think he was. I mean, of course I have no idea how their rate of growth and such as that is, but I don't think he was very old.
I was going to ask you earlier, what was your best guess?
Oh, you know what, honey? I'll be honest with you. I have no idea. I mean, nobody has any idea what their rate of growth is.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I wouldn't even be silly enough to try to make an educated guess, because it wouldn't be an educated guess at all. So, I haven't a clue, but I don't think that at that size that he would have been very old at all. And I think mom and dad would still be protective, and they would, just like Chuck said, they would probably have been making a stink, at least to make some type of an attempt to scare all those naked apes away from him. So, but it didn't happen. They got him, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. So.
Because I've even wondered if they would have followed his scent, if they had been able to, because you hear so many stories of Bigfoot following people home, or if you hurt one, they'll come back. And so I was just wondering, I just wonder what happened to mom and dad.
Well, once they loaded him on that train, I don't even think mom and dad could have followed him. That's kind of like cars tracking. You hear this all the time in crime stories. That somebody snatched some child or woman, or it's usually women or children, off the street, and they get tracking dogs out there, and the scent will end right at the road. Now, that dog did not figure out which car came along and they were put in, and then drove off. There's no way that scent's going to be there anymore.
Yeah.
So, I think that's probably exactly what happened to JACKO. JACKO got stuck on the railroad, put on the train, and if they did follow the scent, I mean, I don't know how Bigfoot track. You hear people talk about them sniffing the air, and I mean, obviously their olfactory system is far better than ours.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're in that wall situation. I mean, you even see that in some of your primitive tribes, that they can actually smell stuff that we would never be able to smell and be able to scent out things better than we do. But even humans do not have good olfactory systems built in. We can't track like a dog by just smell. We can't do that. So I think they would have been limited in trying to figure out. They probably knew something had happened, but they didn't probably know what.
Right. Right. Poor Jacko.
Well, it is. It's a sad story. I mean, people act like, oh, a great story about Jacko. Well, it's a sad story about Jacko. And we hear this time and time and time and time again. This is what humans do. This is what humans do. Aren't we proud of ourselves?
Right. So further on in this, it says that in this article, it says that he had bruises on his head and his body. He was very sore.
That's probably from him falling down the hill.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, I don't care what kind of animal you are, human or otherwise. If you take a good, long, hard fall, you're not going to feel too good about it at the end.
No, they thought he was just some crazy person. Oh.
Well, unfortunately, I think that, again, we go back to people that they're not stupid people, but they're not really well educated as far as most of your primates. I mean, some of them may have seen or heard about or read about chimpanzees and other monkeys, because we do know that people did have some interaction with monkeys, and probably some chimpanzees too. They were fairly common knowledge that people know about chimpanzees. So the fact that some people refer to him as an ape man, but they're not going to have real good, what's the word I'm looking for, verbiage to explain what they've got. So they're kind of limited in what their descriptions are going to be of them. So, nowadays we've got the internet, we got TV, we got movies, we got this, we got that. And, our educational system's come a long way, I think. There's things out there on the internet now, if nothing else, that you can type it in and immediately a picture will flash up and you can see what it is. They didn't have that kind of stuff back then. All they had was drawings, and if they got lucky, they got a photograph. So, they were just limited.
Yeah.
It's definitely a fascinating story, and I'm in agreement with everybody. I think is that this really happened, and it was a true event, and it's just sad that it ended the way it did. But I do believe it's one of the real deals.
Yeah, I do too. And it's one of those, we're never really going to know the truth of it. But based on the way that he is described, with the long forearms, hand or paw, but then he breaks a limb by twisting it, and the hair all over his body, that's what we describe Bigfoot as. So back in 1884, I'm gonna go with it. Being real, being it true.
I agree.
Well, and I'm in total agreement as well. So, I mean, it couldn't have been anything else. I mean, they didn't have chimpanzees traipsing around the forest in those days, and I just,
Not like to mention they described him as being half man, half beast. Like that's it. That's just it.
Yeah. Well, and the one thing that I did find kind of strange now, I don't remember anywhere in any of those articles that they said that he was quadrupedal. He was always bipedal.
That's true. That's true.
So, I mean, what else are you going to think about? What else you going to call him or refer to him as?
Yeah.
That's another characteristic.
Yeah.
Sure is.
I mean, we hear Bigfoot going quadrupedal sometimes, but the majority of the times they're bipedal.
Yeah.
So, but I never remember anywhere in any of those news articles that I read that anybody said, oh, he was, on all fours. It was always he was bipedal, walking like a man.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Jacko.
Yeah, poor little Jacko.
Poor guy with his glossy hair. I've heard reports of it becoming is it Barnum and Bailey? What was that? The circus.
Right.
Yeah.
Being the dog boy?
Oh, yeah, the Barnum and Bailey circus. He was always going around. P.T. Barnum was always going around looking for oddities.
Yeah.
And
but I read somewhere that somebody was saying that Jacko was probably sold to him and was the dog boy. I can't remember now what we just said he was. But I also read that he spoke multiple languages.
I don't think P.T. Barnum ever got his hands on him, but I think that I did read somewhere where he was voicing, he'd heard about it and was actually voicing an interest in getting his hands on him. And I don't think, I think that's when the guy that in Yale there actually decided that, and it wasn't his handler that did all this. It was somebody else, and I don't remember the man's name, decided, well, heck, if P.T. Barnum could make money with him, then he could. It was all about making money off of him.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It was the old standard greed factors.
All right. Well, you guys, I think we've all said that he is true and that he is real, and he was a Sasquatch. We agree.
Yes, ma'am.
He's just a little Sasquatch.
Just a little Sasquatch. Poor guy.
That just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time.
He sure did. He fell off the wrong cliff at the wrong time. He didn't wake up quick enough.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we're going to end this, and we will talk to everybody next week. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.